the Vatican has long been cloaked in mystery and intrigue, and its finances are no exception. But it's now said that the city-state is moving towards ending decades of secret banking. Joining me down the line is John Hooper, author of The Italians. Well, John, let's start with some figures. What's the Vatican worth today?
If you can tell me how much Michelangelo's Pietà is worth, for example, then I can tell you how much the Vatican's assets are worth. The realizable assets, as far as we know, they are around about $3 billion. Added to that, we found this out only last December, there are hundreds of millions of dollars more.
Well, as you mentioned, some months back it was uncovered that the Vatican had, as you say, $1.5 billion in assets that it didn't previously know it possessed. How can these sort of massive amounts be overlooked?
There's been a very interesting report in a magazine called America, which is edited by the Jesuits. And that says that he didn't really discover this money, that it was known about beforehand, and that what it consists of is money that was donated by either individuals or by dioceses over the years, and which was kept, some of it, in a fund that gradually accumulated and which was set up for emergencies. Now, it's quite a reserve fund, this 1.5 billion, half of all of their realizable assets. But it seems that some of this money was used to pay compensation when the Vatican Bank became embroiled in the affairs of Banco Ambrosiano, the big Italian bank that went under, and that some of it may have been used also to pay the legal bills that have arisen from the various sex abuse scandals.
But why is there muddled information about assets and land value, etc.? Is it a cover-up or is it simply bad accounting?
Vatican has always been very, very secretive, particularly about money. At one time, they used to issue financial statements to people like myself who report on the Vatican, and they would leave out crucial details, so you couldn't do the sum. And to some extent, that's still going on, because although there's all this talk about transparency, we still really don't know the exact figures. Cardinal Pell's description of this money, for example, was very vague. He talked about some of it which should have gone on to the balance sheet and some of it which was purposely kept off it. Well, what exactly the distinction between those two things is, I really don't know. What we do know, according to Cardinal Pell, is that the Vatican is very far from broke.
So Pope Francis is dedicated to cleaning up the finances of the Catholic Church. So how much work does he have cut out for himself?
He's already put in quite a lot of work, because he's sat in on meetings of his Council of Cardinals, which is this advisory body of cardinals drawn from archdioceses all over the world, when they've been discussing the cleanup of the Vatican's finances. But it's a very, very big task, and I think that it could even last into the reign of his successor.
So John, be very clear with me here. What is the relationship between the Vatican Bank and the Church?
The Vatican Bank is an organ of the Catholic Church. Its exact relationship with the Vatican has always been another area of lack of transparency. It has a very strange constitutional definition, and it is physically inside the Vatican, but apparently is a body of the Catholic Church. And quite a lot of progress has been made on giving it a proper standing. But it is essentially to hold funds placed with it by, for example, religious orders, which need a bank that they can trust and which can hold their money invested ethically, that's the idea, and also be able to move it around.
So who are its clients, and is it riddled with loopholes when it comes to tax?
It was, because really the two issues are connected. On the one hand, the Vatican Bank was meant only to provide services to institutions of the Catholic Church, but the whole question became much vaguer because some individuals who in some cases had given considerable donations to the Catholic Church were allowed to have accounts. And then it became vaguer still, as, for example, some politicians got accounts, because it is an offshore bank as well as the bank of a religious institution. And that's when the problems really started, because it was being used for offshore purposes rather than for those that it had been set up for.
How do people view it? Because obviously with offshore accounts such as HSBC, we've seen in the news recently, they've been having a lot of troubles there. Of course, with the Vatican Bank, you don't really hear that much about it. So is there sort of an element of it being above the law?
They've certainly been outside Italian law, which has caused a great deal of resentment in Italy, because it's known that some Italians have used their contacts in the Vatican to get money outside the country and away from the taxman. And so that's been an ongoing dispute with the prosecutors in Italy, repeatedly trying to get at facts and figures about the Vatican Bank, which over the years have been withheld. The impression that one is getting now, based on some of the recent developments, is that under Francis that is going to stop and the Vatican will cooperate, and that the Vatican Bank, which has been put under a much more professional kind of management, will also cooperate with the Italian authorities and with the authorities of other countries as well, because Vatican now really has an interest in cleaning up its act and complying with international standards so that it can continue to do business around the world.
So with more transparency and shared information with the Italian government, how do you see this impacting the church, and what are the advantages for Italy's economy?
The Italian economy can count on having plugged one possible escape route for hot money. That's essentially what the authorities are after. And for the Vatican, the advantages of this cleanup, I think, are mainly reputational. They allow it to hold its head high and to do business and invest around the world at a time when offshore transactions are coming under increasingly hostile scrutiny.